What's going on, YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look, that's right, at the Stanley Cup Finals here in 2023. On the West Coast, as your Western Conference champions, you have the Vegas Golden Knights for their second Stanley Cup Final appearance since 2018. And, of course, the Florida Panthers, who also in their existence are going into the Cup Final for their second appearance in their franchise's history as the Eastern Conference champions. The path for both of these teams is very different, and the expectations for both of these teams in the playoffs was very different. We're going to talk about all that. But there's also a lot of similarities between those two teams. We're going to take a look at those as well. Of course, who I think is going to be the key players in this series to watch for, my predictions, and of course, previewing some of the matchups. We're going to look at all of that today. So real quick before we get into the video, guys, let me know down below, are you rooting for the Golden Knights or are you rooting for the Florida Panthers? Down in the comment section down below, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get right into it. So, let's get this going. So looking at our Eastern Conference champions, boy, what a path it's been for the Florida Panthers. They were not supposed to get past the first round, and here they are on the brink. 4 more wins from winning a Stanley Cup. The Florida Panthers' path to the Cup, very interesting. They beat the Boston Bruins, the President's Trophy winning, dominant monster throughout the regular season. Boston Bruins in 7 games up in Boston. The second round, they took on the Maple Leafs, who were another very dominant team in the Atlantic Division, who themselves beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, obviously, a lot of respect given to them. Yeah, they beat them in 5 games. I could count on my fingers 5. That's how many games this series took for the Florida Panthers. 5 games, they beat them 4-1 in the second round. Really, it's not a shock that they beat the Maple Leafs. It's more the shock of how they beat the Leafs. Up 3-0 in the series. The Leafs on the brink of desperation, finally won Game 4, but in Game 5 up in Toronto, things did not go well. They ended up losing that game in overtime, and the Florida Panthers found themselves in the conference finals. Then they ended up going to the conference finals, and pretty quickly, in very swift business, very pain-free for the Hurricanes, swept them in 4 games. It was a closer series than that, and you have to respect the Hurricanes, but they nonetheless won 4 games, and the Hurricanes won 0. Big goose egg. So at the end of the day, the Florida Panthers were able to win some close games in that series, and they find themselves in the Stanley Cup Final. Now, the key players to watch in this series, the 2 most notable that everybody's talked about, of course, we have to mention them. Sergei Bobrovsky in between the pipes has been incredible for the Florida Panthers, and funny enough, he didn't start the playoffs, right? We obviously saw 3 games from Alex Lyon in the beginning of the Bruins series, but Sergei Bobrovsky throughout the postseason so far has a .935 save percentage and a 2.21 goals against average. He also has 1 shutout throughout the postseason so far, and he's got 11 wins so far in his 14 games. So he has been playing A-OK since he started in the middle of that first round series against the Bruins. Of course, the other key one to watch for here is Matthew Tkachuk with 21 points through the postseason. He's currently leading all players in the Stanley Cup playoffs here in 2023 for points with 21 points, 9 goals, 12 assists. He's a plus 10 with 5 even strength goals, 4 power play goals, and 4 game-winning goals. Matthew Tkachuk is definitely the leader of the Florida Panthers train. Don't forget, though, there's a lot of other underrated players in terms of depth scoring, in terms of just pain in the ass to play against. Carter Verhaeghe and Barkov are right behind him in points, playing quite well. Same thing for Sam Reinhart. Guys like, I forgot his name. Anthony Duclair has also been playing quite well. Brandon Montour on the back end has been picking up some goals and points. But don't forget some of the spiciness to this team, right? You've got the Sam Bennetts, the Anton Lundell, who is incredible in the corners. I think he's going to be the next John Tavares, Jonathan Toews-esque player. He's just so good in puck battles along the boards and in front of the net. Really a gifted talent, and is a guy that I would not want to play against in this series. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to see how Lundell does in the really, really bright lights in the Stanley Cup Final. I'm really excited for him. So this is definitely a team that they didn't get here by accident. Everybody's saying this is a Cinderella run and this and that. Yeah, absolutely it is. You look at this team on paper, though, it's not all that surprising. With the way these guys are playing, they believe they can beat anybody in their path. They beat the Boston Bruins. They beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. They beat the Carolina Hurricanes, the top team in the Metro. They know what they're doing. They will be well-equipped and definitely well-prepared as Paul Maurice's team takes on the Vegas Golden Knights, which we're going to get to right now. So the Vegas Golden Knights is a different story here, but not too different. The Vegas Golden Knights were kind of expected to be here. I mean, obviously Edmonton was the team to beat, and Colorado, but, nobody's all that surprised that Vegas is here. They finished the regular season with 111 points, winning the Pacific Division, and they had home ice throughout the entirety of the playoffs so far. So it's not all that surprising for them that they are in a spot here where they are going to the Cup Final. Now, it's interesting here for the Vegas Golden Knights, how they got here. Looking through the regular season and in the playoffs, their leading point producer is Jack Eichel. He's got 18 points through his 17 games. He's got 6 goals, 12 assists. He's got a couple of pretty important goals. But I think what's interesting about this series is, how much more maybe depth in terms of time on ice Bruce Cassidy is willing to do here, right? Tkachuk is playing over 22 minutes a night throughout the playoffs. Not the same for Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel's average time on ice is under 20 minutes. So I think as this series goes along, as you're going through the playoffs, that's going to be a benefit for the Golden Knights. They're just more well-rounded. And that's something that I think, as good as the Panthers have been and as well-rounded as they are, Paul Maurice does tend to put Matthew Tkachuk and some of those star players out there a lot more than Vegas has throughout the entirety of the playoffs. And will that maybe start to catch up to them? Will they start to tire come Stanley Cup final time? So we'll see what happens there. Another guy that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, a couple of pretty important players on this team. 3 game-winning goals for each of these 2 players, Jonathan Marchessault and Chandler Stevenson. Some of the misfits, the Vegas Golden Knight original misfits, really contributing here for the Florida Panthers. So as much as everybody's talking about Jack Eichel and how good he's been for the Vegas Golden Knights in his first playoff appearance in 7 seasons in the National Hockey League, he has been quite impressive. But do not sleep on some of these guys like Chandler Stevenson and Jonathan Marchessault, who respectively have 31 points between the 2 of them through the postseason. They are playing very good hockey as well. Now, we also would be remiss if we didn't mention something I saw from Bruce Boudreau in NHL Network. He had mentioned how big the Golden Knights defense is. This is basically a basketball team on the back end. Now, the most notable one, obviously, without a doubt, is, let me see, where is he? Nick Hague. 6'6", 220 pounds. Nick Hague is not somebody that's going to be fun to play against in the Stanley Cup Final. But, of course, you've got some other really pain-in-the-neck defensemen on this team as well. Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, Zach Whitecloud, Alec Martinez. This is a really bolstered defense, and this is a team that really relies on those big boys to push everybody out of the front of the net, win a lot of puck battles, and I think that's going to be an interesting matchup with guys like Matthew Tkachuk, Anton Lundell, Alexander Barkov on the other side for the Florida Panthers. Now, this is obviously the most exciting part of my videos because I know you guys love when I do the comparisons between the offense, the defense, and the goaltending for the 2 sides. Now, this is, of course, objective, right? This is pretty subjective on my opinions, but I think for the most part, when you get to this point, when you get to the Cup Final, the gap is so narrow between them, but some of them are a little bit easier to decipher than others. So looking at the forward side of things, I ended up going with the Vegas Golden Knights. And the reason for that is a couple of different reasons. Yes, of course, Matthew Tkachuk leads the way in points throughout the entire playoffs, which is he has more points than anybody on the Golden Knights. But there's more depth and there's more well-roundedness in the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the first key point, which I mentioned earlier, the Golden Knights' top players are playing less than the top players in Florida. So it seems like there's a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more there's a trust from Bruce Cassidy in the bottom 6 than Paul Maurice with the Florida Panthers. And that's not a discredit to the Florida Panthers bottom 6, but I think there is just that sense of maybe there will be less tiredness just on paper, more kind of a safety net there of guys being more well rested. Now, again, the Florida Panthers have played a lot less hockey than the Vegas Golden Knights throughout the playoffs, but still, you cannot disregard the fact that this is a team that, yes, they've played more games, but the average time on ice does even that out a little bit. And I think that's something that you have to remember here. So I'm going with the Vegas Golden Knights. They have more goal scoring in terms of just overall. Now, again, maybe some of the teams they've played against in Edmonton and Winnipeg, they were able to score more goals against, but still, nonetheless, you're still looking at a situation here where the Golden Knights never played a Game 7. So, yes, they technically played more. They played pretty much the same amount of games as the Florida Panthers. So there's not much of a disparity there in terms of looking at the playoffs, as the Vegas Golden Knights did not play in a Game 7 at all throughout the first 3 rounds of the playoffs. Now, another interesting thing to look at is the fact that you have guys like Marchessault. You have guys like Bill Carlson, Crazy Bill. You've got those guys scoring at a level that is, they're scoring the important goals, right? Matthew Tkachuk is the goal scorer. When you talk about the Florida Panthers, yes, you get some depth scoring from Reinhart and Duclair and things like that, but 3 game-winning goals from Marchessault, 3 game-winning goals here throughout the playoffs for Chandler Stevenson. You cannot deny those things. So I'm going to give the edge slightly to the Vegas Golden Knights for the forwards. It's a really close gap because there's some really talented players on the Florida Panthers. I'm giving this one, though, to the Golden Knights. Defense, kind of a similar story. I got to be honest with you. I think this is something where the Vegas Golden Knights have the edge. I think, again, when you get to this point, both defenses have to be good to get to the Cup final. But like I said, the size of the Golden Knights defense and just the structure from Bruce Cassidy, I think it's a compliment that their goaltending hasn't even needed to be that good. The Golden Knights defense, the goaltending hasn't been all that good, right? Nothing against Adin Hill or Laurent Brossoit throughout the playoffs, but they haven't been that good. Their numbers aren't something that is so incredible that you just have to just be in awe of. Now, he does have a .937 save percentage, so that's obviously not something to gloss at, but he hasn't even looked that good. It's just the structure of the Golden Knights makes it where basically any goalie can go in there and they will succeed because of how structured they are defensively. And that's kind of been the case throughout the entirety of the playoffs. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. So I'm going to give the edge to the Golden Knights once again. So forwards and defense is to Vegas. Goaltending, without a doubt, I think this is the easiest one. It's got to go to Sergei Bobrovsky and the Florida Panthers. I think with his numbers 1-for-1 against Adin Hill, I know you don't really want to do that, but in this situation, I'm going to. The numbers overall are actually better for Adin Hill, but in terms of the effectiveness, like they have needed Bobrovsky in more games in Florida, right? Especially in that Toronto series. The Hurricanes and the Leafs were putting up like 40 to 50 plus shots a game. Sergei Bobrovsky was getting a lot of rubber thrown on him despite only playing 9 games in the second and third round of the playoffs. So he's seen a lot of rubber throughout the playoffs. They've had to rely on him a lot more. So maybe his numbers aren't actually as good as Adin Hill, but his effectiveness in getting those key saves has been critical. And that's something that I hate to say for Vegas. They weren't getting some critical saves throughout the playoffs from Adin Hill at points, especially in the Edmonton series. And even at the end of the Dallas series, there were a couple of goals, especially in Game 5, that you were like, Adin Hill, you want to have that one back. You don't really have that as much for Sergei Bobrovsky. So that's why I'm going to go with Florida for the goaltending. Now we get to the most interesting part of the video, because I know you guys like my predictions. So I love these two teams. These two teams, honestly, I'm very excited that they both made it to the Cup final, because I like the non-traditional hockey market side of it. I like seeing the growth of the sport in non-traditional hockey markets. And you look at the striking similarities between these two. You've got the disastrous ends to their seasons last year, right? The Golden Knights, very upsetting how things ended last year for them. The Florida Panthers got beat in the second round of the playoffs, barely by the skin of their teeth, got by the Caps in the first round. Big trades for American players in the offseason, right? Matthew Tkachuk for the Florida Panthers, a very questionable decision at the time, really paying off dividends for the Cats. For the Golden Knights, of course, taking the big risk on Jack Eichel. That has paid off dearingly for them, and he has been a key contributor to the Golden Knights' success this season. Neither team is playing in a quote-unquote traditional hockey market, which, again, you're seeing the growth of the game. And I know people north of the border are kind of punching the air right now because they don't like this Cup final, but it is what it is. And, of course, both organizations looking to win their first ever Stanley Cup. There's also a couple of other comparables. Both teams getting to the Cup final for their second time in franchise history. For the Golden Knights, this is now in 6 seasons. This is their 4th trip to the Western Conference Final, 2nd trip to the Stanley Cup Final. Can they get a repeat of 2018, except maybe win the Stanley Cup? There's going to be a key series for both of these teams. I'm so excited for this matchup. You have two really solid teams. They didn't get here by accident. You never get there by accident. And you look at the Golden Knights, always advance, never retreat. And I think that slogan continues in the Stanley Cup Final. Guys, my prediction is the Vegas Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup in 2023, winning this series in 7 games. The Florida Panthers, I have to give them so much credit. The fact I have to put this sweater down really does bother me. They are an incredible hockey team. You cannot discount the Florida Panthers. But the Vegas Golden Knights have this structure that even if Adin Hill isn't perfectly on his game, even if Jack Eichel isn't perfectly on his game, they find a way to win hockey games. Who's going to score the game winner? Is it Marchessault tonight? Is it Stevenson tonight? Who's going to be the guy? It's always somebody for the Golden Knights. That defensive structure can wear down the Florida Panthers. I think some of the top-end guys could get shut down. If Tkachuk isn't on his game, could be a little bit tough for the Florida Panthers throughout the series. Jack Eichel, through the first round, didn't really look that good against the Jets. They still beat them in 5. And now Jack Eichel is going. And now he's feeling the momentum. You've got that veteran leadership from guys like Mark Stone, Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, Chandler Stevenson. This is the year we are going to see the Vegas Golden Knights lift Lord Stanley's Cup in 2023. My prediction is the Golden Knights winning this series in 7 games. Guys, that's it for my preview. Make sure to leave your predictions down below, as the Vegas Golden Knights are my prediction here to win the series in 7 games. But let me know what you guys think down below. Guys, check out our link down below for Built Bar. We've got a discount code at GLH at checkout. You get a little discount, and obviously every little bit helps. Built Bar is a really good company. They actually just released some chocolate milk called Split, so make sure to check that out as well. Guys, also make sure to check out my merch shop at Spring. We've got a couple of merchandise things under the video, so make sure to check those out as well. Guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and it's nighttime, baby. Go Knights. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.